Hey there, and welcome back to SV's 2 Cents.
So, we are continuing our journey with the Twilight Zone 1959 show. I have already reviewed and explained the first 2 episodes in my previous video. I have put the link for it in the description box. So today we'll be talking about episode 3 and episode 5. Now you might be wondering, wait, what happened to episode 4? Well, episode 4 reminded me so strongly of Billy Wilder's Sunset Boulevard that I feel it deserves its own separate video, where we can properly compare the two. So for now, let's quickly dive back into the Twilight Zone. Episode 3. Mr. Denton on Doomsday. What if your biggest enemy was your own legend? That's what this episode addresses. The episode opens in a dusty old western town. Cowboy hats, saloon doors, the kind of place where respect is measured by how fast you can draw a gun. And in the middle of that town, we see a broken man. Drunk, shaking, humiliated. A group of men are openly mocking him. They force him to sing, almost make him beg for a drink. And when they finally toss him a bottle of alcohol, it falls, breaks, and spills onto the ground. At this, the man, our protagonist, so desperate, so addicted, so shattered, actually kneels down and drinks whatever little remains. All the people laugh at him. It is painful to watch. Not because he is weak, but because you instantly feel that this man was not always like this. And sure enough, we eventually learn that once upon a time, this man, Al Denton, was one of the fastest, most feared gunfighters in the West, a legend. But legends often come with ghosts. At some point in his past, Denton had to kill a much younger man in a duel, and something inside him broke after that. The glory remained in people's memory, but inside him, only guilt, only emptiness. After that, he lost his mojo and completely drowned himself in alcohol. The episode now immediately becomes more than a Western, because this isn't a story about a gunslinger. It's a story about a man trying to escape who he used to be. Then something interesting happens. A strange traveling salesman arrives in town. His wagon quietly rolls in. His name is revealed as Henry J. Fate. Now, whether the episode wants us to take that literally or symbolically is left beautifully unclear, but that name is definitely not accidental. He is as if actual fate personified. Denton, now unconscious from drinking, lies helplessly on the road. Mr. Fate throws a gun beside him and walks off with a smile. Now, is this a way of showing that Denton comes across a gun by chance? That is, by fate. Exactly, that's the point. When Denton wakes up, he sees the gun. He takes it and walks into the saloon. Mr. Fate is watching this from a distance with a smile. Inside, the same bullies begin mocking Denton again. Same humiliation, same laughter. To this, Denton pulls out the gun with no intention to fire. Hands shaking from addiction, but this time, something changes. In a moment that shocks even Denton himself. Shots are fired from Denton's gun. And with unbelievable accuracy, he completely outshoots them. Not killing them, but humiliating them precisely, expertly. Like the old Denton is suddenly back. And instantly, the town reacts exactly the way society often reacts. Not with concern, not with compassion, but excitement. The legend is back. People love the myth, even if the man himself is broken. And that is such a smart observation by the episode. Because sometimes the world doesn't care what you are facing inside, whether you are healed or broken. It only cares whether you can still perform the role it remembers. And maybe that's one of the consequences of success. Anyways, back to the story, a younger gunslinger named Pete Grant hears what happened and immediately challenges Denton to a duel that evening. And this is where the tragedy deepens. Because Denton does not want this at all. He doesn't want violence. He is unsure of his own capability. He knows that the gunshot earlier was nothing more than a miracle. He doesn't want another death, especially not another young man. But the cruel logic of that world is simple. If he refuses, he is a coward. If he accepts, someone may die. Helpless, he starts practicing, and it is heartbreaking. Because now we see the truth. His hands shake badly. Alcohol has destroyed his nerves. He cannot possibly win fairly. Which again proves that the earlier miracle was exactly that, a miracle. by fate. When he is desperate, Denton meets Mr. Fate's wagon. Mr. Fate is selling all kinds of odd things. Denton asks what he has. Fate casually mentions a potion, a very special one. A liquid that gives a man 10 seconds of absolute accuracy. 10 perfect seconds. Enough to win any duel. Helpless, Denton buys it as his only choice. And now the episode becomes something more philosophical. Because what is this potion really? Luck, destiny, confidence, or just a play of fate? See what I did there? Anyways, that ambiguity makes it fascinating. The evening arrives, the duel begins. Denton stands there, terrified. And just before taking the potion, he notices something shocking. His opponent, the young gunslinger, is holding the exact same bottle. And suddenly everything changes. Because both men instantly understand the situation. If both drink it, both become perfectly accurate. Which means both may die. And in those few silent seconds, you can almost see the thoughts racing through their minds. If I shoot, I die. If I don't shoot, he shoots. And I die anyway. It's an extraordinary moment of tension. Not because of action, but because of pure human fear. On count, they both fire. And what happens is brilliant. Neither dies. Instead, both shoot each other's gun hand. Both are permanently injured. Neither can ever be a gunfighter again. And just like that, the cycle ends. No heroic winner, no glorious revenge, no legendary climax. Just two men freed from violence. And outside, Mr. Fate watches quietly, almost smiling. And I really love this ending. Because on the surface, it feels ironic. But underneath, it feels strangely merciful. Maybe fate did not come to help Denton kill. It came and gave Denton just enough support to help retire another gunslinger. Maybe that gunslinger would have ended up doing something bad in life. Maybe Denton would have eventually been forced to pick a weapon. Maybe fate came to make sure neither man ever had to kill again. And that completely changes the meaning of the episode. Because this is not about winning a duel. It's about escaping a role the world forces onto you. This is fate, balancing the world. Denton wanted peace, but his legend would never let him have it. So fate intervened and gave him peace permanently. That is such a clever ending. And once again, the Twilight Zone proves it isn't interested in predictable storytelling. Just when you think that you're watching a Western about gunfights, it quietly becomes a story about guilt, destiny, masculinity, and redemption. Now let's move on to the next episode. Because the Twilight Zone does something completely different yet again. No gunfighters, no fate, no deadly duels. Instead, it gives us something far quieter, and perhaps far more personal. Episode 5, Walking Distance. This episode honestly felt deeply personal to me, because I think almost everyone has imagined something like this at some point. Imagine you decide to visit your hometown, the place where you were born and brought up. As you reach the place, you see that nothing has changed at all. Everything is exactly as you remember it, not just places, but also the people. And that's when you realize that you have actually time traveled to your hometown. You see your younger self, you see your parents, you see your childhood friends, and get to talk with them. Hasn't everyone thought of going back in time? Well, then this episode's plot will interest you. Because that's exactly how this episode begins. We meet Martin Sloan, a successful advertising executive, a grown man. Busy, frustrated, clearly accomplished, but also clearly exhausted. Mentally somewhere else. Emotionally disconnected from the present. His car stops near a gas station, and he notices the sign of his hometown. It says that the hometown is just at walking distance from the gas station, and so, naturally, he decides to walk. At first, everything feels nostalgic, beautiful, warm, comforting. He reaches a cafe that he remembers from childhood, and immediately begins talking about old memories with the waiter. How he used to come there 20 years ago, how he would order his favorite ice cream sundae, how simple life used to feel. This is a man who not only deeply misses his childhood, he also believes that the old times were much beautiful than the present. He casually mentions about the old owner of this cafe, assuming the man must be long dead by now. The waiter asks for just $1. a price Martin used to pay as a child. At first, we feel that the waiter is just being kind, respecting Martin's nostalgia, and hence taking a small payment. But as Martin leaves the cafe, we as audience receive the first clue of the plot. The waiter quietly walks inside and speaks to the very same old owner, old but alive, exactly as Martin remembers him. And in that moment, the audience begins realizing something is wrong. But Martin, unaware, keeps going. He visits a busy park. People walking, children playing. He sees a kid playing marbles. Still in his nostalgic mood, he starts talking to the young boy, talking about how he himself used to play there 20 years ago. As he is looking at the marble in his hand, we clearly see that Martin misses his carefree childhood severely. Then the boy asks him his name. Martin tells him, and suddenly the child looks frightened. The child says he knows Martin Sloan, but he doesn't look like that. Saying this, the child runs away. This is the second clue to the audience. And now the unease grows stronger. Then comes the moment, the realization. Martin sees a young boy sitting exactly where he used to sit as a child. And that boy is him, his younger self. And that scene is extraordinary, because this isn't just time travel anymore. This is confrontation. A man literally standing face to face with the life he lost. And from here, the episode becomes emotionally devastating. Martin immediately goes to his childhood home. He wants to see his parents, alive, young, exactly as he remembers them. But instead of comfort, he is met with discomfort, fear, confusion. Because to them, he is just a strange man claiming impossible things. And perhaps that's one of the most painful truths here. Memory welcomes us warmly. Reality does not. Then comes the most heartbreaking part. Martin tries to approach his younger self, not to harm him, not to change history, but simply to say something, to tell him to enjoy his childhood as much as he can, because in future he will miss it. He will always be on a run, for a career, for money, for life. The younger Martin is riding the merry-go-round, a perfect symbol of childhood joy, freedom, carelessness. The grown Martin approaches him. The child is scared seeing a grown man calling his name and running towards him on a merry-go-round. He gets frightened so much that he jumps and hurts his leg, and immediately, the adult Martin feels the pain too. I mean, of course he does. It is the same life after all. But what truly breaks your heart is understanding the motivation behind older Martin's character. He doesn't want to change his future. He doesn't want to use this time travel opportunity to earn more money or something. He already has those things. What he wants is his innocence back, freedom back, a simpler life back. He wants to tell his younger self, enjoy this, hold on to this, because life becomes complicated. And honestly, who hasn't felt that? And the episode gives us its most powerful scene, late at night. After the fair is emptied, Martin sits alone, sad and exhausted, and his father finds him. His father has found Martin's wallet and now knows who he is, or at least understands enough, that this impossible stranger is somehow his son from the future. And what I absolutely love here is that the father doesn't react the way most stories would. No emotional embrace, no dramatic reunion, no endless questions about the future. Instead, he reacts with wisdom, maturity, and surprising emotional restraint. He asks him that he must have knowledge about what all things happen in future. When Martin replies with a yes, his father tells him to leave immediately, because he understands something important. Every person has their own time, their own joys, their own struggles, and interfering with that is wrong. This time does not belong to future Martin. It belongs to the younger Martin. So Martin, with a sad face, agrees and decides to leave. But then, something beautiful happens, even while remaining firm. The father's love quietly emerges. He asks, "Is it that bad for you? In the future?" And that question says everything. Because even without fully understanding what's happening, he is still a father. Martin is still his son, though they both probably look the same age currently. Answering to the question, Martin admits the truth. He says that, no, the future isn't terrible, but life has become relentless. career, responsibilities, pressure, constant movement. And somewhere along the way, he lost the merry-go-round. That line is not about an actual ride. It's about joy, wonder, peace. And his father gives the perfect answer. One of the most beautiful lines in the episode's spirit: "There are merry-go-rounds in your time too. Maybe you're just not looking in the right place." What a message, because that is exactly what so many adults feel. Maybe this is what the father, who himself is a grown-up, has also felt. This is a father teaching his son from his own experiences. We think happiness existed only in childhood, that life was magical then and ordinary now. But maybe that's not true. Maybe joy never disappeared. Maybe we just stopped noticing it, trying to find joy in the wrong places. With this insight, Martin now returns to the present, back to his car, changed. Not because he reclaimed the past, but because he finally understood it. And I think that's why this episode hit me so hard, because nostalgia is seductive. The past always looks softer, kinder, simpler, but you cannot live there. Life only happens in the present. And just like that, the Twilight Zone does it again. One episode gives us a tragic western about guilt, fate, and escaping violence. Another gives us an emotional fantasy about memory, time, and growing up. Completely different settings, completely different tones, completely different emotions. And honestly, that's what is making me fall in love with this show. It refuses to repeat itself. It refuses to stay predictable. Every episode feels like opening a different philosophical short story. If you've watched The Twilight Zone, tell me, which episode should I absolutely not miss, because at this point, I am fully inside the Twilight Zone. Hope you enjoyed this discussion. Until next time.